All right, so it's Easter morning, and some of you, you've been waiting a long time for this. You cannot wait until Easter. This is one of the high points of your year, and today is a good day. There's some of you, it's Easter, it's kind of an obligation, let's go to church. And there's some of you, because of the covenant that you made when you got married, you were drugged here and you acquiesced, and you decided to come as well. So regardless of the reasons why we're here, it's Easter. And that means that Jesus is not dead, he's alive. So this means one of two things. This either means absolutely nothing at all, or it means everything. So the verse that Chad read a little bit ago, you heard the same word mentioned 3 times. The word would have been afraid or fear. So just in those 10 verses, you heard 3 times the word fear mentioned. So one of the things that I'm afraid of is heights. Like, I'm feeling a little nauseous right now that I'm 3 feet off the ground. Like, this scares me. And there was a time when I was in Texas that this young couple came up to me after church, and they wanted me to do their wedding. They said they got engaged. They showed me the ring. I asked him how he did it, and they told me, and it was really cool. We looked at the date. I was available. I said, "Are you getting married here at the church?" And they said, "No, we wanted to talk to you about that." Her best friend's a photographer. My best friend's a hot air balloon pilot. And I thought it'd be really cool if we could do this in a hot air balloon. And I said, "What?" And the fee for the wedding just quadrupled, by the way. So this was a big thing for me, and I really wanted to do this. And I've probably done a couple hundred weddings now in my career, and I can honestly tell you that I prayed more for that one way than I did the 199 others combined. So we got into this basket, and there was like 6 of us in the basket, and I was ready to throw up. I was doing my best not to, and we got like 100 feet above the ground and 200 feet above the ground, like 6 miles above the ground, and finally I looked down, and I was actually really surprised. Like, it was like this really peaceful, serene, relaxing thing. I looked at the guy, he knew what he was doing. It was so cool to see the whole city like this. I've never seen it that way before. And when I was driving home, I thought to myself, just think of all the opportunities that you've missed, Craig, because fear and anxiety have caused you to keep your feet on the ground. And as we look at this message this morning, I want us to think about that. I think that fear and its cousin anxiety have really caused a lot of us to miss a lot of opportunities. So in verse 1 of the Easter story, now after the Sabbath, toward the dawn of the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, his clothing white as snow. And for fear of him, so the guards looked at him. For fear of him, here's what happened. They trembled, and they became like dead men. Now, have you ever found yourself in a story before? I think you have. We see things, we hear things that make us uncomfortable. And our reaction is that we tremble, or we just freeze dead in our tracks. We become paralyzed. We can't move forward. Now, the guards, they actually had a lot to fear here. They did. There was this earthquake. That's enough to, shake us, right? There's this angel that they see. The stone is rolled away from the tomb. They hadn't seen everything. They'd seen enough, and their reaction is that they trembled and they were consumed with fear. Now, they also would have dealt with anxiety. Fear is like this immediate present thing that we deal with right now. Anxiety is a future thing that they would have been dealing with, and they dealt with that. They're asking themselves the question, what is this angel going to say? What is he going to do? How is this going to affect my future? And the Bible simply tells us that they trembled and they were frozen. Now, fear and anxiety are going to be unwanted guests in our lives. These intruders will sneak into our lives, and they will steal the life that God is trying to give to us. I know in my life, I have let fear and anxiety rob my rest. I know that I have allowed them to embezzle my energy. They have caused me to miss opportunities because of them, because of these unwanted guests. There's some of life that has passed me by. Now, I'm guessing that this is going to be part of your story as well. Yeah, you wanted to have a tough conversation with somebody, but you just couldn't find the words, you couldn't find the occasion, you couldn't find the place, because you were afraid of the conflict that you thought you might cause. There's some of us that we want to find love, or at least we want to ask somebody out on a date, and we couldn't dial that last digit, or we couldn't hit send on the text message because we were fearful of rejection. We don't like that. There's some of us that carry the commandments of God on our shoulders and the weight of the sin on our back because we're afraid of disappointing God. There's some of us who desperately try to overfunction as parents because we don't want to let down these little ones or these not so little ones that God has entrusted us to. We have the fear of failure at trying to take the next steps in our life, so here's what happens. We stay put in the land of safety, sacrificing possibility on the altar of certainty. This fear, this anxiety is causing us to miss out on part of life. Now, what is going to happen is one of two reactions. When fear or anxiety come into our life, it's going to cause one of two things to happen. One thing is it can cause us to press the brakes really fast and stop. That's what happened to the guards. They trembled and they froze. Now, the other reaction that fear and anxiety can give us is it helps us to actually push the gas pedal and to move forward in faith with focus. So I want you to hear this, okay? Giving into our fears is the most convenient way to dismantle your dreams and humiliate your hopes. If you want to let the enemy win, give into your fears. Living an amazing, living in a significant life is at once a challenge and an opportunity. But this basic problem that we as human beings have is we avoid this life because we spend more time and energy on our fears than we do on our future. Now, great relationships, they take listening, they take patience, they take forgiveness. It takes a lot of work. A great accomplishment is going to take a lot of work and hard work at that. Great boundaries are going to take discipline. Great faith is going to require unwavering trust and perseverance. Now, we have a choice, and you actually get to make this choice every day. You make this choice today, you're going to make this choice tomorrow, you're going to make it the day after that, you made it yesterday, and the choice is this. We can either deal with some rejection, failure, stress, fears, and anxiety today, or we can deal with a whole lot of regret and guilt later in life. I want you to know that fear is not bad. Fear is natural. If you run into a bear on the trail, fear is going to be a natural emotion. It's going to give you adrenaline to get out of there as fast as you can. Now, fear in that way, it's just natural and normal. So what we do with the fear then becomes either average or exceptional. So Franklin Delano Roosevelt became our president in the 1930s. In 1933, he gave his first inaugural address. Now, at this point in the United States, it was the darkest point in the United States economic history. There were darker days ahead in the near future, but there was no time that was as dark as this. He was speaking to a nation of people that was in panic. Now listen to what the president said to the people. So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. Fear itself is not bad. The fear of fear is absolutely tragic. When we let fear and anxiety overcome our life, that's a tragedy. Don't let fear overcome you. Don't be like the guards at the empty tomb and be paralyzed by fear. Listen to the words that Paul says, and you're going to see this on the screen in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. Here is Paul's advice to Timothy. For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline. So the Easter story continues in verse 5. But the angel said to the women, okay, so he already knows something about them, right? This is God speaking to the women. Do not be afraid. For I know you seek Jesus who is crucified. He's not here. He's risen, as he said. Come see the place where he lay, then go quickly to tell his disciples that he has risen from the dead. And behold, he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him. See, I have told you. Okay, so Mary and Mary would have seen the exact same things that the prison guards saw. They would have felt the earth shake below their feet. They would have seen this angel. They would have seen this empty tomb. They would have seen this stone rolled away from this tomb. Now, the first word out of the angel's mouth was, do not be afraid. Do not fear. It doesn't matter what you've seen. It doesn't matter what you felt. It doesn't matter what you've experienced. Don't be afraid. Now, what's interesting is throughout the Bible, God uses this phrase more than he uses any other phrase and every other phrase. Because God knows the condition of the human heart, and God knows the condition of the human mind, that we default to anxiety, that we default to fear. Now, I want you to listen to just a couple times that God said this in the Hebrew Scriptures. One of them is going to be in the 23rd Psalm. Many of us know this psalm. So God here is speaking to the people, and he says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. It's like God saying, okay, I mean, this is a tough time, I realize that, but don't be afraid, because I'm with you. My presence is bigger than your problems. You know, you personally have experienced uncertainty in your future. You've been overwhelmed and under-resourced. You face challenges. You faced obstacles. Maybe some of us are at that place right now. But God keeps speaking to us, doesn't he? Isaiah chapter 43, verse 1, here he's speaking through the prophet. Do not be afraid. So God says, do not be afraid, for I have ransomed you. I have called you by my name. You are mine. Now listen to the word he says next. He doesn't say if you go through the deep waters. He says, when you go through the deep waters, I will be with you. When you go through the rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you. For I am the Lord, your God, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior. So Isaiah is basically saying here, there's going to be problems. Life is not going to be easy. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be times when life, it's just tough. But I want you to remember that God is going to be with us, that he has called us by his name, and we are his. So Jesus, the Lord, our God, the Holy One of Israel, our Savior, he did not die so that we would spend this world alone. Jesus died so that he could be present with us forever. Jesus did not die so that we would settle for average in this one life that we have. Jesus died so that we may experience abundance. Jesus didn't die so that our fear would overcome us. Jesus died so that we could overcome our fears. Jesus himself says in Matthew chapter 6, verse 34, therefore, do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient is the day for its own trouble. Anxiety, it can, like this fear of the future, the unknown stuff, there's no real threat in front of us. This can be absolutely devastating. It can, and it is. You know what anxiety will do is it will steal our strength. Yeah, I once heard someone say that anxiety takes tomorrow's clouds and it puts them over today's sunshine. This anxiety over possible failure is the one thing. It is the one true thing that will make it impossible for you to accomplish your dreams and achieve your goals. So the story continues, and I love this part of the story in verse 8. They're not alone. Jesus met them. So we read in verse 8, so they departed quickly from the tomb with fear. So note here, they didn't leave their fear there. They departed with fear and great joy, and they ran to tell the disciples. And behold, Jesus met them, saying, "Greetings." And they came up and took hold of his feet, and they worshiped him. So we have to know here that Mary and Mary were still fearful. Like, they still dealt with this fear, but they moved forward in spite of this fear. Now, this is going to be one of the most important lessons that any of us can learn in life, and that is being able to move forward despite our fears. Instead of feeding our fears, what we do is we face our fears. We are able to look fear directly in the eye, and when we are able to do the things that we are most afraid of doing in life, we can start to do anything and everything in life. Now, I want to talk about another person who dealt with this fear. His name was Joshua. Joshua would have been the man who led Israel from the wilderness into the promised land. Now, Joshua had an army behind him and a raging river in front of him. And listen to what God says here to Joshua. So I would say for anyone here this morning that's in between a rock and a hard place, this is for you. God says to Joshua, "This is my command, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." Now, I want to be very clear about what courage is. Courage does not mean that fear is non-existent. What courage means is that there is something or someone that is more important than your fears. Our anxieties and our fears will never disappear, but they can lose power over us. At its worst, fear will freeze us. At its best, it focuses us and moves us forward. Now, when we can learn how to be fearful and anxious in the right way, we have really learned the ultimate in life. Our fears are going to get in the way of an abundant life. Anxiety will prevent us from living out God's purposes in life. Now, this life that God is trying to give us, this life full of purpose, this life full of passion, this life full of love, both with others and with God, it's available to us, but we first must have a holy confrontation with our biggest worries, our deepest fears, and our nagging anxieties. Overcoming fears is not going to be a one-time transaction. It's going to be something that we need to continue to do. That's why God reminds us, if we read the last verse in this text, then Jesus said to them, they've already heard this. They just heard this a little bit ago, and here Jesus is saying it, do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee, and there they will see me. So we hear this phrase over and over, just in the short text, do not be afraid. So in Philippians chapter 6, verses 6 and 7, here's Paul's take on it. Here's his reminder. Don't worry about anything. So for all you worriers out there, all the anxious people, all of us who are afraid, this is good stuff, don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank him for all he has done. Then you'll experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. So I want to ask you a question. What would your life look like? What would your life look like if faith overcame fear? If courage overcame caution? If prayer overcame panic? If worship overcomes worry? And if audacity overcomes anxiety? I think a lot of us would look a lot different. I really think that. There is freedom and fun and faith and faithfulness and fruitfulness that exists just right beyond our fears. I was thinking about this, and I'm 46 years old, and I can really break my life down into 3 compartments. And I don't care if you're 4 years old or if you're 96 years old. I think you can break your life into those exact same compartments. Compartment number 1 is the times in my life when I let fear and anxiety get the best of me. I can tell you lots of these times. I can tell you the times when I was in grade school and middle school and high school. I can tell you the times last week when I let this stuff get the best of me. I can also tell you about the opportunities that I missed, the people that I didn't get to meet, the people that I didn't get to be in a right relationship with. You know, I look back on this compartment of my life and I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. Because if this compartment had a title, its name would be something like guilt or resentment. I don't want to have anything to do with that compartment anymore. I don't want fear and anxiety to get the best of me. I don't want to be frozen like those guards, missing out on this once to be lived and never to be repeated life that God is trying to give me and all of us. Now, there's a second compartment. It's a little bit different. This compartment is the times in my life when I said, you know, there's something or there's someone more important than this fear. So I'm going to actually do a little bit of courage here. And I'm going to recognize that God is with me and I'm going to try my hardest. Now, I want to let you, I got a confession to make. I have not always been successful at everything I've tried. There's a lot of these times that I've actually acted in faith. I've acted with courage. And you have too, right? And it just didn't work out for one way or another. When I was in high school, I was like so shy. I was awkward. I was kind of gangly. But I wanted to go to prom. And there's this one girl I liked. Her name was, I'll call her Susan, but her real name's Greta. Just in case she listens online. I think she does, actually. And so I had this flow chart. Like I don't think I've ever talked to a girl on the phone in my life at this point. And I had a flow chart. If her dad answers, if her mom answers, if she answers, if her brother answers, and that was a very short flow chart. It was like hang up. So her dad answered the phone, and I'm like, Dr. Anderson, this is Craig Finstead. May I speak to Greta, please? Yeah, Craig. Just hold on a second. I'm like, I'm so nervous at this point, and I got my flow chart in front of me, and she goes, hi, Craig. Greta, this is Craig Finstead from school. Will you go to the junior-senior prom with me on April 3rd? She's like, really? Now, I had a big problem. The word really was not on my flow chart. I had like 50 or 60 different responses. Seriously, I did. It was like this great big thing. And so I didn't know if she meant like, really, a loser like you is asking some of my stature, don't bug me ever again, like period. Or I'm calling the police, or really, like, you're interested in me? This is going to be, like, really cool. So I improvised. I wasn't very good at the time. I make a profession and a living of it now. But I said, really? And she goes, Craig, that would be so cool. I've been waiting for you to call, but Chris called me last week, and I already told him I'd go with him. Yeah, thank you. Got more sympathy from you than I did than 8:30 folks. And I hung up the phone, and it wasn't a bad thing. I said to myself, okay, I should have called a week ago, but I can do this. I'm going to have to do this again. I can do it. Some little bit of courage from me and a lot of presence from God. Like, I can do things that I've never done before. And if you try something and you fail, don't. That's not a bad thing. It's a learning experience. It shows that you can do something and you're going to be successful at it. And that's the third compartment. The third compartment is when we can get enough courage and enough of God's presence, and then things work out the way we want them to work out. Like, that's the really cool stuff. It doesn't happen a lot, I don't think, for a lot of people. But when it happens, it's amazing. To quote one of our presidential candidates, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. I was thinking, I got a confession to make. Don't tell anybody this, okay? They actually thought that was funny at 8:30. You guys didn't really get that one. I'm talking to other people. And so I don't like to ask people for money. I don't like to do that. My PhD's in theology. I love to write. I love to read. I'm an idea person. I love people. But asking people for money is not like my favorite thing in the world to do. And do you know what I did between June 1st and November 30th of last year? I asked people for money. In fact, I asked many of you for money. A lot of times it was individual conversations, and this was odd for me. It was somewhat awkward. You had to pull up to someone's house, and I'm friends with them, or I was becoming friends with them, or I've knew them for a long time, and I would actually pray a prayer, God, this is not easy for me. I pray for courage. Let us just have a holy conversation and let all parties just feel great about where we're going. Yeah, I love the people. I believe in the project, but this was not easy for me. I remember I was at a Creighton soccer game the Sunday. We had the church on the Sunday where everybody turned in their pledge cards, and Creighton was playing in the NCAA tournament. So right after church, we went and watched the Creighton soccer team play in the NCAA tournament. And two of the people that counted the pledge cards, they sent me a text message and said, we made it. You know what I was most grateful for is not that we actually made it. What I was most grateful for is the lesson that God teaches us. That when something or somebody becomes more important than our fears, with a little bit of courage and a lot of God's presence, there is absolutely no limit to what we can do. And what I pray this morning is that our fears and anxieties can die and be resurrected and replaced by faith in God's presence and courage that some things and some buddies are more important than our fears. I think it'd be really cool if all of us go out into our communities, to our schools, to our businesses, to our neighborhoods, to our sports teams, as people who are going to be strong and courageous, people who say, God, you're with me. I'm going to try something I have never done before. And whether I make it or I don't make it, this is going to be a good thing. So let us pray.